Hey clowns, welcome to Crimelia Street. I'm Sam.
And I'm Tori.
And we are once again gathered here today.
The FBA and state prosecutor continued interrogating Keyes. Keyes shares the details of Samantha's abduction with the interrogators. He said he was feeling invincible that night, and when asked why, he said because he could tell Samantha was scared. When he pulled the gun on Samantha, he told her that he had a police scanner in his ear, which he did, and he tells her that if she hit the panic button and the police come, he'll kill her. And he's got a gun pointed at her at this point as well. So this explains why she didn't hit the panic button that night, which APD kind of said, well, he's her accomplice because she didn't hit the panic button. So it just, that really makes me mad.
That sucks.
He stuffed napkins into her mouth, which also makes the investigators realize why she didn't scream when the strangers were near his car. It's because she couldn't. The investigators asked him what he was thinking when he was abducting her, and he responded, I liked her. They pushed that he had a trip the next day, and he said that was part of the idea. He goes on to continue telling events of the night, and when he says that was part of the idea, he means it kind of covers his ass if he has the trip the next day. Even his girlfriend was like, there's no way.
Right.
So he continues telling details of the night. As he was leaving the parking lot, he found a new camera worth about $300 on the ground. And when he went down to grab it is when Samantha got the chance to run on Tudor Road. He said people were everywhere, which police doubted. They felt like he was trying to kind of glorify himself because he mentions a lot throughout his stories of all these witnesses that were around, and I think he's just trying to kind of like bump his ego up. But he tackled her, he placed a gun against her ribs, and he threatened to kill her if she tried to escape again. They asked why he paused for a bit before driving off once he put her in the passenger seat. And he said that he was telling her how this was going to work. He told her they were going to drive somewhere. Police picked up on him, like, using language that minimized what he had done too, which is, like, a sign of a serial killer or of, like, a sociopath. He's retelling the story saying, oh, we were just going to go for a drive, and I buckled her seatbelt in, and just, like...
Yeah.
Definitely minimizing what he was actually doing to this poor woman at the time. These were cues that told the experienced officers they were dealing with a cunning expert. She kept saying her family doesn't have money, she being Samantha, and Keyes told investigators he wasn't trying to scare her, he was trying to act like a normal person, which was another cue to them that what's wrong with, like, he's aware that he's not a normal person.
Yeah, nothing about you is normal.
No.
And not a good way.
Yes, in the worst way. Tragically, as they're driving, a police car pulls up next to their truck on Samantha's side. Keyes can see her kind of mulling over her options and choices in this moment, as was he if she made a move. And Samantha did not alert the officers. She was probably terrified that he'd kill her and wanted to take her chances and was hoping that he was telling the truth about just asking for ransom. Keyes said he drove to Linnery Park, which was a nearby park. At this point, he's driving around a lot, kind of waiting for his girlfriend and daughter to go to sleep at home because he wanted to bring Samantha to their home. Keyes covered his seats in drop cloths at this point and told her to lay down in the back and covered her in drop cloths as well. It was near 11:30 p.m. and he realized that he had a lot to do with not much time with the upcoming trip the next day approaching. They went to Walmart and he got a burner phone, which he was going to use to ask for ransom. He at this point figured he'd go back to the coffee kiosk to pick up her phone and ask for ransom from her phone. And he decided to, while he was there, to kind of clean up a bit and, like, lock the place up, too. So it looked like she had actually closed the night before. He told her he'd only be gone for a couple of minutes and he'd be really mad if she tried to get away. He tried to make it look like she'd cleaned up while he was inside before leaving, which, typical man, because he thought he cleaned up. And the second those employees came in the next day, they were like... It is a mess in here. This is not like Samantha.
Who closed last night?
Right. And then, okay, so he leaves the coffee kiosk for the second time, locks up, realizes that he left her keys in the kiosk still, goes back into the kiosk for a third time,
oh my
gets
gosh.
the keys, locks the kiosk and leaves for the last time. If APD had watched the entire surveillance video initially, they would have known that Samantha was kidnapped when they saw Keys go back into the kiosk twice without her.
God.
They never
Oh my
watched past
God.
that first part. Like,
Dang it.
someone, like, maybe don't, I don't know. That's crazy. That seems like a negligent,
Yeah.
misstep.
Whew.
Like, how much time was wasted because of that?
Right, right. And poor Samantha just like trapped or I can't imagine. Whew.
They were driving around as Keys was waiting for his girlfriend and daughter to go to sleep so he could bring Samantha back to his place. Samantha had to go to the bathroom and he couldn't risk her going in the truck because DNA. So he tied a rope around her neck and let her use the bathroom in an empty lot. He said they were smoking cigars together, which investigators realized as Samantha probably trying to connect with him on some level, and they notated it as her being really brave. He mentioned that there were other people there and witnesses as well, and the police again doubted it. This was the sixth mention of him saying that there were witnesses. Like, it seems odd that people would have seen a rope tied around a girl's neck in an empty lot and not reported it, especially with the events of the next day and like this becoming such a big story. So then they went to Earthquake Park, which is another nearby park. Keys at this point realized that he was running out of gas. He kept changing jackets and hoodies so as not to be noticed on their surveillance footage, which little did he know how behind APD would be to being on his trail anyways. This didn't matter. They did end up getting gas. Keys then sent texts from Samantha's phone to people who were calling Samantha. One was to her boyfriend and one to her boss, because I believe her boyfriend called her boss asking where she was at a certain point because she wasn't home. He then put the battery, and this text to her boyfriend too was, remember the text in the beginning when she said, "I'm going to stay at a friend's house, like tell dad." So this was a text from Israel that he sent from her phone. He then pulled the battery out of the phone, hoping that it wouldn't be able to be tracked that way. And investigators asked Keys why not just turn the phone off, and his response was because he's paranoid. Unfortunately, he wasn't right that the burners couldn't be tracked, but he was right that the battery being out of the phone would keep them from being tracked. So because he pulled the battery out, they still weren't able to be tracked during that time. Keys brought Samantha to his house. There were people out walking their dogs still when they arrived. He told Samantha to stay low and not to make any noise as he put the rack back on top of his truck. So he did take the rack down too when he did anything criminal, it seemed like, because he also had it off when he went to the ATMs as well. Feldis then asked what he did with Samantha next, and Keys said that these things are things he's never spoken about before. Between 1 and 2 a.m., he gets Samantha out of the truck and walked her into the shed in the backyard. He had her blindfolded. He was telling her that he'll make her comfy, but if he hears reports of police coming, because he still has the scanner in his ear, he'll be there before the police. He asked her for her address and the location of the truck she shared with Dwayne so he could get her ATM card that was in the truck. So this is tying back.
Dang.
He pulled up her address on MapQuest. This whole time, his daughter is in the house on the same property, not a large property, and is just sleeping in the house. I don't know, that's just like so upsetting to me.
Yeah, that sucks.
It was now 2:30 a.m., and they needed to leave in about 2.5 hours at 5 a.m. He went to Samantha's house and used her key to get into her truck. As he was locking up, some guy came out, the guy Dwayne, turned and ran back inside the house. Keys went down the street and hid behind a snowbank. No one came back outside the house, so he got in his car and left. I bet that's got to be so hard. It's got to be so hard for Dwayne and James because they both knew at this point, and Samantha's alive at this point too.
God. That just gets you.
I know.
Like, I wonder, did he have, like, a gun with him or anything? Like, what if they just, like, tackled him or something? You know, like...
He probably did have a gun with him.
Right.
It's just so unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
He went to use the card and then realized he hadn't written down the PIN number that Samantha had already told him, so he had to go back to his house, get the PIN number from her again. And then after all that, he went to the bank, which is that time that the card was used that night when they were trying to blame it on James or Dwayne because of that. And there was only 94 cents in the account.
Oh, yeah.
Keyes said he wasn't upset about that. That was okay because he wasn't just after the money. That was just a bonus.
Gross.
Yeah. Keyes didn't get back home from checking the account until 3 a.m. The question investigators posed was, what could he have done during that time between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m.? Like, he still had to get ready to go to the airport. He had to get changed, shower, wake his daughter up, feed her, make sure she was packed and he was packed for the trip. Interrogators asked where Samantha was when he left for the airport, and he said that she was in the shed. They asked if Samantha was alive at that point, and Keith said he'll save that story for later, which is so frustrating. He does this a lot during their interrogation, where it's almost like he's like baiting the interrogators. He'll give them like one snippet and then he's like, oh, I'll tell you another day. I have written down here that it was so fucking annoying.
This guy sucks.
Yes, the whole like last half of this book was just like, it was so annoying to listen to because it's just him being a fucking twat the whole time. So Feldes asked if she was alive in the ransom note photo, and Key said no.
Damn.
They asked if she was alive when he got back from his trip, and he responded no. And they asked again, was she alive when you left? And Keyes admitted that she was not alive when he left. Feldes asked Keyes what he did to Samantha. Keyes was realizing how little they knew because Feldes again is fucking blowing it because he's asking what they did when he's not supposed to give that information away that they don't know. And the more like experienced interrogators are in the room with them the whole time too, trying to save face like where they can, but like they're just dying inside knowing that like this guy is just fucking this up royally.
Damn.
So Keyes was realizing how little they know and became defiant and repeated he wouldn't tell that whole story right now. He said he didn't want to because he knew who he wanted to tell that story to, who was Mickey, Detective Dahl, the lead detective from APD. And it should probably be noted here that she was described as like a very beautiful woman. So there is the question of like, is that why he will only tell her? Yeah. Feldes asked why, and he said, because that's the way I am. Keyes didn't want to admit how he killed Samantha, but admitted that he did kill her. He said that he would tell Detective Dahl the rest of the details. Keyes also demanded he didn't want his girlfriend's house torn apart anymore, and he wanted the cops to come to him if they wanted to search it, and he may let them. He didn't want them talking to Kimberly ever, who is his girlfriend. He explains no one knows what he's done besides him, and he's been that way for 14 years. Implying that if they don't abide by his demands, he won't tell them the rest of what he knows, and he's the only one who knows about it. Mickey, Detective Dahl, returned to Anchorage and meets with Keyes. Keyes says he's going to leave out some details and give them the abridged version because there's too many people in the room. He says this more than once before they get into a discussion about the details, and he says that he will tell the story blow by blow if more people leave the room, and he will say like what was said between him and Samantha and tell them like exactly what he was thinking at this time if less people are in the room. And he really didn't like Feldes, so I think he like specifically wanted Feldes out of the room. And at this point, Feldes should have conceded and should have left the room. But Feldes insists that he keeps saying, let's just start off and see where it goes. And he pretty much refuses to leave the room. So Dahl was a much more experienced interrogator, thank God. It was now clear to her that Keyes had done this before, and they wanted to know if Samantha was his last and how many were before. He said some of the details, no matter which version he tells, are going to be graphic, and he says he doesn't want them on the media. Investigators assured Keyes that they would keep the details from the press and the location of Samantha's remains and the extent of her captivity, and mostly do everything they could to keep his daughter's name and location a secret, which I believe they did still to this day. I don't think anyone knows his daughter's name or anything, which is great because she doesn't deserve that.
For sure.
So far, the press only knew the name of the person that had been arrested. Okay, so now he's He's going to go more into the details. Keith says that he set the shed up a couple of days before, having no idea of who or how he'd be using it. But he did know that he wanted to take someone from the Huffman area because there were so many coffee kiosks staffed by teenage girls, almost all of which worked alone. He had prepped the shed with a tarp, a foam mat, and fleece sleeping bag of sorts. Investigators asked him what the tarp and such was for, and if it was for catching like blood or for blood not spilling onto the shed. And he said it wasn't necessarily for blood, but just like DNA in general. He came across Samantha that night, so went ahead with his plan, even against his better judgment, he said. He thought about whoever was going to pick her up and thought about taking both of them together, but decided against it because he did realize that like she didn't have a car in the parking lot, so he assumed someone would be there to pick her up. When he got home from the bank, he poured a glass of wine and went into the shed. She asked if everything was working out and if he got a hold of her dad. He said yes. He undid her restraints once again, giving her a glimmer of hope. And the investigators at this point felt like he knew what he was doing with that. And also by telling her that like he did get a hold of her dad. He restrained her again in a more complicated way using ropes rather than cable ties, and he sexually assaulted Samantha twice. He put on leather gloves and strangled her. As he was in the act of this, what he was thinking about was that he still needed to shower.
Disgusting.
It just shows, like, the absolute, like, lack of fucking empathy. He stabbed her once in the back, but it wasn't deep. He said he wasn't trying to stab her to make her die faster. It was something else, and that was another thing he didn't want to go into the details of. He finished his wine, went back in the house, took a shower, woke his daughter up. While his daughter was eating and getting ready, he went back into the shed. He had space heaters going in the shed that was slowing down rigor mortis. He rolled her body up into a tarp and her remains, and he locked the shed door and called a cab. When investigators asked what he was thinking leaving her body in the shed, he said he was thinking it was 20 degrees out and he didn't have anything to worry about. He said he wasn't worried about getting caught because it's Anchorage, and he knew by the time anyone figures out what had happened, the trail would have been cold. Even if they had pictures of his truck, they wouldn't know whose truck it was or have any tire tracks, and he knew that they wouldn't have DNA or fingerprints or anything, so he wasn't worried about it. This says something about the Anchorage PD and the fact that he was so confident at their lack of a response that it was something he could count on.
That's so sad.
And he knew this because he had been listening to the police scanner so much. Now we know that her body was left in the shed for 2 weeks while they went on into Texas and New Orleans and on the cruise. When he came back, he took apart the interior of the shed, working around where her remains were stored, and took out all the cabinets and used it as firewood. So he pretty much burnt everything inside. He said when he took her body out, the sleeping bag that she was rolled up in was pretty much covered in blood. This was a contradiction from what he had said the day before when he said that the stab wound was minimal. So it's like, which is the truth here? Everything she was wrapped in and the clothes he wore that night, including the shoes, were either burned or went to a landfill. He kept her cell phone and a small amount of change, which he added to his own collection of coins, which was just strange. Like,
yeah.
Just, I guess you can't burn it. I don't know. I was going to say just burn it or get rid of it, you know? Go spend it? I don't know. Dahl asked if he had braided her hair, and he said he did, but not right away.
That's so creepy that she wasn't alive in the photo.
We have not gotten to the creepiest part of that yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. He hangs her at this point and thaws her body out because it had been frozen with a hairdryer, I believe is what he used, which is just fucking horrific. He sexually assaults her again and loses track of time to the point where it was now morning. And
just losing track of time.
Right. It's... And it's now morning, and his daughter came knocking on the shed door looking for him. He left Samantha's body there and took his daughter to school. After he picked his daughter up from school, he went and bought a Polaroid camera from Target, or they went and bought a Polaroid camera from Target, but they didn't have the film, which frustrated him. So he had to go home and go through the nighttime routine with his daughter, dinner, homework, putting her to bed, for driving out to another Target an hour away that did have the film. He also bought a foam sled, tote bags, carbon ribbon, and paper, a sewing kit, and fishing line, and acquired a copy of an Anchorage paper from February the 13th. When he was asked why he picked the 13th, he said because he wasn't in Anchorage on the 13th. So just like every little detail he's thinking about. He said it took him all night to do her makeup for the ransom photo. At the time of the ransom photo, she had already been dead for 21 days.
Oh my God. Jesus Christ.
I know. And her body had just been so well preserved because it was so cold out. He taped her mouth shut so it looked like her face had some texture, and ended up using the fishing line and the sewing kit to sew her eyes open so that it looked like she was alive. I'm so sorry to laugh at that point, just like seeing you.
That is like heinous. Oh my gosh.
That is that detail. That is one of the most horrific of this case,
I guess now, yeah, I understand why the actual photo isn't.
Yes. It would be a lie.
Widely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, that is. Yikes.
Yeah. Absolutely horrific. Like,
oh my God.
He was asked why he only asked for $30,000, and he said he had just seen how much money was being raised on media coverage. Still curious why he didn't ask for 60, but whatever, I guess you can't make sense of it. He said he kept just the phone and the ATM card to get money, and he didn't realize that ATM transactions could be tracked, which seems pretty unbelievable considering how much thought he put into everything else.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Keyes, at this point, needed to move her body because his girlfriend was coming back from her travels, and she also had a friend, Kevin, with her who was staying in their house as well. And he said that, like, the smell was starting, because it was getting warmer out, there was a smell now of decomposition. Investigators asked why he mentioned that she almost escaped in the desert in the ransom note, and he said he was trying to make it seem like she was being human trafficked and that she was being sold in Mexico as a sex slave. He dropped off the ransom note and then later in the day went back to check on the scene and was pleased to see a couple of officers in a crime scene van. He knew the message had been received. He then dismembered Samantha and made 3 trips over 3 separate days out to Matanuska Lake, always removing the battery and SIM card from his cell phone. He always drove during the day as well because it looked less suspicious, and it was about an hour drive each day. On day 1, he cut the hole into the lake, which he said was really difficult. He checked the depth of the lake there, and he ended up picking this lake because it was one of the deepest lakes in the area. Once he got the hole cut, he checked the depth, and it was 40 feet deep. He then covered the hole with plywood and left for the day. Day 2, he brought some of the remains to the hole. He set up this ice shack around the hole, which was like the other shed that I was confused about. He then weighted the remains and dropped them down into the depths of the lake. Then later that day on day 2, went to a parent-teacher conference for his daughter right after this.
Oh my God.
It's just like,
poor daughter.
I know. I think about that. I've been thinking about that a lot, like, researching this case, because she has to, like, as much as she's protected from the public, like, she's probably not protected from knowing this, you know?
Right.
On days 3 and 4, he continued bringing more remains to the lake and submerging them in the hole. And then when he was done, he went fishing. So we just popped by a parent-teacher conference after. We go fishing.
Yep. Just a day in the life.
Just a day in the life. The FBI needed to find the body. They did find the hole in the lake that he was referencing. There was still some hope that this was a hoax and a wild goose chase, and like maybe Samantha was still alive somewhere. The FBI dive team was called out. They had decided which divers would go down because she was weighted down but not wrapped in anything, and they knew whoever had to pull her up had the potential of having like a heavy emotional toll taken pretty much on whoever had to recover the remains, just because she wasn't wrapped in anything. It was, you were going to see everything. On April 2nd, 2012, one of the investigators compared the condition of Keyes' shed to the Unabomber and wondered if there were other similarities between the two. Kaczynski, who was the Unabomber, was an off-the-gritter, a loner, very smart, and left no forensic evidence, and also left false clues. There was still some hope that the confession was a hoax, but either way, they had to prepare James Koenig for what they may be pulling out of the lake. They first sent down a remote-controlled submersible, and as soon as the soot settled, they were able to see that this was not a hoax, and then the dive team went down and recovered Samantha's remains. Keyes mentioned there were 3 computers in his house, a laptop he smashed and took to the dump, a tower that Kimberly used mostly, and then another computer that he used. Investigators assumed Kimberly's computer wouldn't have much on it because they just assumed he's too smart for that. But they searched it anyways. Thank God. I bet APD wouldn't have.
Yeah.
There were many photos of people from missing person articles and websites on this computer, all different genders and races, and appeared to be from different walks of life. There were many photos of Samantha as well, almost like he stalked her. Keyes was in, and they don't know if this was like post her abduction or pre her abduction. Keyes was in the process of firing his own legal representation and trying to represent himself. He told investigators that anything else he tells them will be on his terms. He wanted assurances things would move quickly, and something else that he hasn't mentioned yet, an execution date. Which is strange because his first request was not the death penalty.
Yeah.
Keyes admitted that he was a serial killer at this point and that they'll never find another body without him giving them the details of it.
Ugh.
Right?
I hate that.
So much I hate that. He's just like running the show and then like toying with them too. And I want that, you know, like I want that information for those families. It's so frustrating. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that, you know, that's what the investigators are feeling. He said he wants this whole thing done in a year so his kid can have a chance to grow up without this hanging over her head, which, again, very interesting. He's so concerned and empathetic towards the child. The FBI, again, promised that they would do their best. So he gives details on another couple that he murdered. These are the last 2 that we have confirmed. It's thought that he murdered at least 11 people and suspected in, I believe, 36 additional cases.
Holy shit.
And the FBI, too, has a website that I'll link in the show notes where they've got a long list of like all his travels, like where he was, the dates. He goes to Mexico, he goes to Canada. It's international, all the places that he's been.
Oh my God.
Yes, yeah. It's something. So Bill and Lorraine Currier are the other 2 that he admits to. He had never met them or ran into them before. And it's interesting because they were both kind of heavy set. And it's only interesting because he's a small guy. So it's very bold to take on 2 people. And Bill, the male, was like a large guy too. And he also was, which we'll get into a little bit more, but he was also in the armed forces as well. So I'm picturing like a beefy guy.
Yeah.
June 2nd, 2001, Keyes flew from Anchorage to Seattle to Chicago From there, he rented a car and started driving east to visit his brother in Maine. He stopped in Indiana for a couple days, then stayed at a farmhouse he owned in upstate New York in Burlington. June 7th, he checked into the Handy Suites Hotel in Essex, Vermont, where he'd never stayed at before either. When the sun went down, he left his hotel on foot with a backpack of supplies. He went to a location where he had been to 2 years before, where he had buried a cache, and he called these his kill kits. So he had been through Vermont 2 years before and buried this 5-gallon bucket in the ground that had zip ties, ammo, guns, silencers, Drano to catalyze human decomposition, and he buried it there. He also mentioned that he had more of these kill kits buried all over the country.
Yikes. What?
Yes. And this just kind of shows, like, how much thought he's putting into this stuff, too. Like, he goes and buries it and then waits two years. He didn't know who he was going to take in that area. Totally random. Mm-hmm. But he knew where he was going to go.
That is crazy.
And it kind of shows in this story here, he had staked out an apartment complex across the street from the hotel. At this point, he wanted a mail. He said to the interrogators he was waiting for a mail to come back to the hotel alone. It was pouring rain, and Keyes saw a mail pull up and was walking towards the car, but the guy jumped out of the car before Keyes was close enough and ran into the hotel. So he took a walk, he went back to his hotel for a bit, and then decided he was going to go look for a house with a couple in it instead.
That's awful.
And just, like, crazy how random it is, too, right. You know? He's like, I want a male, and then he's like, no, I'd like a couple instead. And it's just so fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
He found Bill and Lorraine's house, figured it was an older couple who lived there. He had a good feeling that no children or dogs lived there by just, like, looking at the outside and seeing that there weren't any kids' toys or dogs' toys, and they had a pool, so he figured he would see, like, kids' toys in the pool. And it was kind of his rule, or his code, I guess, at this point, no children or dogs. He said dogs because they're just annoying. I love the eye roll you do there. Right. It's like, oh, what a nice guy, no children or dogs.
Right. Like, thanks.
Right. Only old people. Like, God, dude.
Yeah.
So he cuts their phone line. And his work in construction also helped him kind of predict floor plans easily. So he, like, circled around the house and found where they had a window unit in their house. And he assumed that that's the master bedroom. So it kind of showed him just from the outside of the house, like, where he needed to go once he got in. He took a patio chair from out back and used it to climb into their garage. This was another rule of his, that he only went to houses with attached garages, because he would break into the garage and then be able to get to the car without being outside and being able to be spotted. So he grabbed a crowbar from inside the garage, and this also was an indication that a man lived here. He unlocked the screen door to the kitchen, prying it open with his knife. These locks aren't super secure. He was surprised to see that the inner door was locked as well. He said when people have 2 doors, they usually just lock the one. Not me.
Oh, I lock everything.
Everything. I lock my little bathroom window. You would need, like, a ladder on the side of my house to climb into. Locked.
Good.
Yes. Good. And those, like, little, you know, the burglar bars.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For
Definitely.
sure. Yep. Mm-hmm. We got him.
Mm-hmm. So the inner door that was locked had a deadbolt, which he could have broken with his crowbar, but he didn't want to make that much noise, and it would have taken too long, so he broke one of the window panes and opened the door from the inside. He awoke the couple and zip-tied them. He had a gun pointed at them. He took lingerie from the woman's drawer, and he admitted to interrogators that his motivation for the attack was completely sexual. This was surprising to investigators because a couple taken at random is almost unheard of, and for sexual purposes is like extremely rare. He robbed them, got their debit card, and scratched the PIN number into the face of it, stole jewelry and valuables and medications. Lorraine tried to escape, and Keyes tackled her and threatened her, and he said he was really angry with her and the fact that these people weren't taking him seriously. As Keyes was rummaging their house for valuables, he found a military insignia that told him that Bill had served in the same unit as Keyes. He mentioned this to Bill, giving him a glimmer of hope, like we saw him do a couple times with Samantha as well, kind of trying to, show that they could connect on some level. He took them out of their house and put them into their own car. They begged him to let them go and said that Bill needed his medications, and they said they'd never tell a soul, but he told them that he was just kidnapping them for ransom and that they would be okay. Keyes drove their Saturn away and pulled up to an abandoned farmhouse that he had scoped out earlier during the day. The house was for sale. He bound the victims and had ropes around their necks. He stuffed their mouths with paper products like he did with Samantha as well. He brought Bill down to the basement, and Lorraine tried to run from the car, and he tackled her and brought her into the basement as well. Bill was screaming for Lorraine, so he struck Bill in the head with a shovel and then shot him in the head in front of her.
Oh, my God. That's so sad.
I know, dude. It's so fucking sad. At one point, he sexually assaults Bill, and I'm not sure if it was before or after he had murdered him. God, I just try to find, nicer ways to say that, and there isn't.
Right.
And then he brings Lorraine up to the second floor and sexually assaults her and strangles her, but not to death. During her assault, she was secured to the mattress in a horrifying way. And that's all I'll say on that. He walked her down to the basement after assaulting her and strangling her. And at this point, he wasn't sure if she even knew what was happening because he had choked her so severely. But he sat her on the bench and strangled her with a piece of nylon rope. He knew she was gone, but he was nervous that she'd wake back up because she fought so hard the whole time. He then took a cable tie and wrapped it around her neck really tightly and left her on the floor. They told him there was only $100 in the account, and he decided it wasn't worth the risk of getting the $100 out, which shows that he had some kind of indication that there was a risk in pulling money out of an ATM, right?
Yeah.
That the card would be tracked.
What a nightmare.
I know, dude. And an abandoned farmhouse, going to the basement of an abandoned farmhouse, it literally is a scary movie.
Yeah. God.
It's so terrible. Okay, when Keyes told the police about this, they reached out to local law enforcement in the area to go search the farmhouse. Turns out the abandoned farmhouse had been demolished, and even more infuriating, when the construction crew tore through the building when it was being torn down, they said there was an overwhelming smell of decomposition, and they never alerted the authorities. I don't know if they just thought it was an animal or what, but
what?
You would think you would call someone.
Yeah.
I mean, I know hindsight is always
right.
Gives some advantage, but it's just
I don't know.
The amount of things that just keep helping him is so infuriating.
Mm-hmm.
He traveled through a few different states hours after, which is his MO. He's, traveling right after the murder. He went to New Hampshire and camped, where he burned the belongings of the couple. He went to visit family in Maine and drove back through Vermont on his way back, and was satisfied to see police set up and that police had been called because Bill and Lorraine were reported missing the next day when they didn't show up to work, but they had no idea where to look for the couple, and this case was unsolved until he made this confession. Okay, that's all we have for this part. Tune in 2 weeks for the next part. Bye, clowns.